This this is the Impressions Exchange Podcast.
Impressions Exchange Podcast.
Where all topics impacting the graphic imaging and printing industry are addressed via in-depth news coverage, analysis, and timely interviews.
Hi, I'm Denise Gustafson, Editorial Director for Printing United Alliance, and the guest host for the special Printing Impressions podcast series in celebration of Women's History Month, highlighting women in the printing industry. During this series, I'll have the opportunity to talk with women from all segments of the industry about their experiences and their journey as a woman in the industry. So today, it is my pleasure to welcome Shari Garvalia, Strategic Account Manager with Showdown Displays. So Shari, welcome.
Thank you, Denise. I'm happy to be here.
To get us started, can you give me a little bit of a background about how you got started in the printing industry?
I was coming out of college. I worked for a telecommunications company, and it was a great job, great experience, but it's what I would call more of a hit and run sale. I had a quota each month. I sold a phone system, and we weren't paid or challenged to work with them ongoing because there was a whole separate team. So now I had to start over. So I was kind of looking around, and back in the day, we would look in the newspaper, and I found a job with the Parker Pen Company. So the Parker Pen Company, the ad read that you would be traveling, which I thought sounded fun. It was a 6-state territory, and you'd have the opportunity to build relationships with the distributors that you would work with. And that's what really intrigued me, because I loved calling on customers and working with them, but I had to move on to the next one. So I looked forward to being able to build that relationship. Fortunately, I was hired, and that was over 30 years ago, and I've been in the print industry since then.
That's great. So obviously you have a ton of expertise on the promo side of the space. Showdown Displays, print and promo. I know you guys a lot for the print side of things, but you are very huge in the promotional product space as well. So through your career, I guess, so far, what do you see as the biggest difference between the promotional products and the printing industry? I'm just curious.
It's interesting because I consider myself in the promotional products industry more so simply because that's where I got my start. And believe it or not, I call on some of the same customers today that I called on when I was with Parker Pen 30 years ago. And
Wow.
that's the promo space. So I'm really strong in the promo space. I've certainly, all of these companies in promo are printing on products. Showdown is more in the print space, I would say, than any of the previous companies I've worked for, because we call on printers, we call on sign shops, we call on promotional products distributors, and we're a wide format printer of visual communication, namely lightweight and portable signage and displays. So we're definitely in that print arena more so than I have been in previous positions.
So it's definitely stretched you a little new.
Without a doubt, when I went to Showdown, I thought, wow, I really need to learn what print is about and learn about those customers, because I hadn't been calling on printers or sign shops in my previous roles.
So I guess education then is going to play a huge role for you, both, I guess, formal and informal in the printing industry, as you've learned new markets, new industries, maybe even new verticals.
I love to always learn and take additional training, continuing education. A lot of it's informal though, too, just learning from other people, learning from customers, learning from experts within our company, and just sharing what works, what doesn't work, and what we can do to be better.
Looking at your history, obviously you say you've been in the industry for over 30 years.
Yes.
Is there a particular project or accomplishment that you've done in the course of those years that you're really, really proud of?
It's so many years to think back over.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to date myself, but I think the biggest accomplishment, without a doubt, would be when I was at Gillette Business to Business, which the Gillette company purchased Parker Pen. So flash forward from Parker Pen, I worked my way up from being that territory sales manager at Parker Pen to a Western regional sales manager to a national sales manager. And so I became the national sales manager at the age of 32. I had a 32-person sales team. I really was most proud of the fact that I did work my way up. I did all of those roles working up to that versus just stepping into it. I think it's a different feeling of accomplishment versus if you go to the next company and you land at that higher level job. I worked up, I was in the trenches, I knew the different steps to get there.
How important was it for you to have role models or mentors to help you along the way as you were making your way with all those different career steps?
It was very important. And interestingly, before I got into the print industry, that first job that I mentioned with the
Hmm.
telecommunications company, one of my first managers was a young female. She was successful, and I would have been about 22 years old. And I just thought she had it all. And she had a family, she was smart, and she was probably just late 20s, maybe 30, 31. So what that told me was, why can't I have it all? There's just wasn't a doubt in my mind. That was one of my first experiences of that's going to be me in a few years. And then when I went over to Parker Penn, my role model was the manager that was a big part of hiring me. He promoted me to the regional manager and then to the national sales manager. But what was unique about him, so he's a male, yet he always said, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Now, I didn't think I was smarter than him, but I think what he was really saying and thinking is people who are different than you. Certainly, he wanted people that were smart, but he recognized that women think differently. We have different experiences. And so on his leadership team, I wasn't the only female. We were 50-50. There were three of us on his leadership team that were female. Along with him, there were two other men. So I believe it wasn't that we were all truly smarter than him, but we were smart in our own way, and we complemented each other very nicely.
And smart means different things. It's emotional intelligence, there's intellectual intelligence. We all come with different experience. We all have been brought up very differently. We have different educational backgrounds, and that all plays into that smartness in a way.
Yeah, and I think you can equate that. So if you're not in a true leadership position, I think surround yourself with smart people. So surround yourself. A lot of times, who you hang out with, who you communicate with, you're going to rub off on each other. So look for those people who are different, maybe smarter in some ways than you. And that's how you can learn and grow in your career.
Definitely. And that's good advice for anyone.
I agree.
In terms of personal growth, how has being in the print industry helped you progress even personally?
I've had the opportunity in the print industry. It's always been in sales roles.
Hmm.
So it involved a lot of travel from day one, from that first position with Parker Penn to what I do today. A lot of it in the US, but I've been to a lot of different cities. I've also had a couple opportunities for international travel. So, what you learn in those travels is significant. And then also all the different people that I've met. I mentioned that some of my customers today I worked with 30 years ago. Things have changed so much, but those are lasting relationships. And again, I've picked up so much from working with different individuals with different backgrounds, with different experiences and different expectations. And I can roll a lot of that into my life and incorporate it into who I am and what I'm doing.
Now, in terms of obstacles, obviously the printing industry tends to be a little bit more male dominated. So obviously women were in the minority when we're looking at it. What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced? I mean, even in sales, most of the salespeople are male as well that are selling. What were you facing? How did you overcome it? Was it an issue for you?
It wasn't a huge issue for me because, again, I think I was fortunate going back to that manager at the telecommunications company. I really just expected it to be what it was going to be, that I was going to move into management, that I was going to be successful. I didn't have a lot of doubts and didn't pay a lot of attention to the doubters out there or what was going on or the people that, oh, you can't do that because you're a female. I didn't even hear it. It was just noise. Challenges, though, I wouldn't say that the biggest challenges, but there were experiences that were interesting and understandable, but also kind of added some levity to the situation. So when I was a young manager, remember I was quite young even when I became a national sales manager, I had direct reports that were male, and we would go in to see an account, and inevitably, if the customer was male, they were directing everything to the gentleman with me versus me. And I was never offended because I have a degree in psychology, and I think that made me very empathetic to their situation. They didn't know it was what they maybe were brought up to believe, that the male is the manager or the boss. So I always took great care to gently let them know if it was even appropriate and let them off the hook because it didn't offend me. It was really just more something that the rep and I would kind of chuckle going to the car. But I also learned from that, and that's what I try and do in a lot of different experiences. What can I take away? The true takeaway is it's so important when we go out and visit people that we do proper introductions. The world's become informal, but I'm really big on always introducing people and what their role or their title is. There's been a phase or a stage of people like, titles aren't important. Well, they kind of are, so that I think it's fair to the customer or who you're talking to understand who you are and who you're with. So if I'm traveling with our president or our CEO, they're not going to say, "Hi, I'm Kevin Welsh. I'm the president of Showdown Displays." But if he says, "Hi, I'm Kevin," I take the opportunity to say, "Denise, Kevin is the president at Showdown." Just so you know who you're speaking to, as I would like to know who I'm speaking to. I think it's very important that people do introductions. I think it's a courtesy and it's out of respect for everybody in the conversation.
And I think it also helps to set expectations in a way, because now you know what their role is. They know, you know what they can or cannot do. So maybe there's a part of a conversation you don't need to have because that's not the right person. Or because the right person is in the room, you can have a very frank or specific conversation, maybe about finance or about money or anything else, especially if you're doing a purchase.
It sounds like you and I had some similar training back in the and that kind of goes back to sales 101 of know who the decision makers are, know who you're speaking to. So I like that perspective on that. That's interesting, Denise.
Well, thank you. I guess we had some. I don't have any kind of degree in it, trust me. I'm winging it, so I will admit that. So, I mean, for you, the degree in psychology is probably very interesting in how you read people and how you talk and interact with them, because you can kind of see some of the maybe the things that are fueling how they act or how they treat others.
I think it really has impacted who I am and how I interact with people. And I fell into psychology because I didn't know what I wanted to do in college. I have a double major in public administration and psychology because you can't do a lot with psychology unless you go on to continued education.
Mhm.
And I kind of wanted to get in, get out, move on, get a career. So I coupled it with the public administration, which was working in the public sector, which wasn't really what I wanted to do. So it drove me into sales. I was told the best way to get into a larger corporation, into the business world, break in, especially with a psychology degree, would be sales. And it really has helped me to look at people probably different, maybe deeper, and try and understand where they're coming from. And I'm a big believer in the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times we make assumptions and judgments, and I try to always pull back and say, well, what's really going on? Like, wait a second, let's look at the whole picture. maybe they perceived what you said differently. And I do contribute a lot of that to that psychology degree.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what may have happened to that person that morning that may have triggered a certain reason, or you don't know. I mean, that's not something you share in a professional environment. If something's going on at home or a tough week or whatever it is, it can change how people react. But I know one thing that's I've always tried to do is no matter how people act, you can't change the way people do things or act, but you can change how you react to them. And I think
Absolutely.
that's important, especially in relationships and building relationships.
Absolutely. I concur wholeheartedly. And I say that even in my personal life, you can't control what other people do, but you can control how you react, whether it's in the family, whether it's out at the grocery store. The one thing we can control is ourselves, and how we react is going to impact what happens next.
How we react, and then giving people the benefit of the doubt. Like you said, we don't know what else is going on. So just don't take everything so personally too, which I think is something that's tough in this time and with everything going on in the world, just in large.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to not take things personally, and part of that is not taking yourself so seriously,
Mhm.
which is also hard, right? Because we want to be successful, we want to be good at what we do, and so yeah, you've got to be serious to a degree, but at the end of the day, it's just another day in our life, and tomorrow's going to be a new day, and new things are going to happen. And what's happening right now that seems so important has got us all stressed out or whatever, it's going to change and it won't be that important tomorrow. So I think that's one of the things you learn though as you do progress in your career is it's all important, but some things are definitely more important than others.
Yes, definitely the case. Now, with your background in the industry and obviously your degree in psychology, how would you say that the role of women has changed in those 30 years?
Well, I've had a different experience perhaps than what you've witnessed being true on the print side, and I've
Mhm.
been kind of on the fringe. More so now I'm on the print side with Showdown without a doubt. I've always been there because of printing on pens, and I was with 3M in between there. But when I first came into the promotional products industry with Parker Pen, there were very few women in territory sales roles. And I think part of that was just simply there was a lot of travel involved, could have been a lot of different things. And I think that has changed a lot. I know it's changed a lot. When I'm out traveling now and I look at the territory roles in whether it's the print industry or the promo industry, it's to me, it appears to be more 50-50. Now, you said there's still more males, so maybe I'm seeing a little bit more on the promo side versus the print side, but
Mhm.
when I look around the room, I look at the supplier side. If I'm at a trade show, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of women here. And then same with the distributors. Back when I was calling on distributors as a young person, kind of fresh out of college, I was usually presenting to males. And now when I go into a room to present, there's a lot more females in the room, sometimes more females. However, you don't always know what their role is. Are they the account executive or a support role? But I don't think it matters a whole lot in the sense that there does seem to be more awareness of the value women can provide.
Mhm. And that's really the important piece. I know the industries are getting better. Obviously, there's difference from promo to wide format to commercial to packaging. There's different ratios, but there is definitely a lot more diverse voices within a lot of the industries, which has been good progress, I think, across the board. Because, like you said, women do bring a different perspective. They do bring something to the table that maybe wasn't there 40 years ago. Things have changed. I'm wondering too, like when you started, there wasn't many females in territory roles. Could it have been also partially because of a work-life balance and that a lot of women were not really pursuing careers and were choosing instead to do other roles?
I do think so, and I've kind of dated myself saying that was 30 years ago. It was a little over 30 years to be honest, but it was when I was in college, women's studies was big. Thought about getting a minor in women's studies and women's lib and all that type of stuff. So I think people realize that, or women, I should say, that I can have it both, or I should try if I want to. I shouldn't feel like I'm not allowed to. And so people started branching out a little bit more. And once you see more women in that role, it becomes more natural. And up to that point, it might have been more traditional careers for women, maybe more teaching and nursing and things along those lines.
And in support roles
Mhm.
as admins or receptionists, or instead of in positions that are more leadership based. But we see a lot of that now today. I mean, for the Women's History Month, I'm talking with 21 women, and if not all of them are in some kind of a leadership role within their companies. Go back several decades ago, that wouldn't have been the case. Things have changed, and I think for the better. And having women in those leadership roles, I also think helps those that are just starting out. Like you said, oh, I can do that. You mentioned your first company. She had it all. She had the career, she had the family. I can do that. She's only a couple of years older than me. If she can do it, I can. There's
Right.
something that helps that as well.
Right. And I think seeing those women in those leadership roles makes younger women just even think. Even when they join that company, they might have just thought, oh, I need a sales job. They're hiring. I'm going to take that job. And then when they see that woman in that management position or that leadership position, hey, maybe I want more. Maybe that looks kind of neat. And I think I can do that too because I've got the background and the desire, and it helps them understand how far they can go, even if they didn't know originally that was going to be their expectation or their objective.
Hmm. And then if those young women can approach some of those that are in those positions and say, I would like to reach out to do this eventually. It could be 10 years from now. What are the steps that I need to do now to build myself to get there?
Hmm.
And I think that mentorship is important, and those role models are so important.
Yeah, and you see a lot more formal mentorship movements, and it could be just mentoring in general. It could be mentoring specifically for women. I've seen a lot of success with that. I think that it's beneficial and it holds people accountable too. I
Hmm.
think from what I hear from, I'm not in a formal mentoring program, but what I hear from the mentors in those programs is they find it as fulfilling as the mentees. So I think it's a good experience and we'll continue to see more and more of that.
I know for me, I definitely can use a mentee that can teach me more about some of the newer social media things. Not something that I grew up with, but for those that are digital native, it's second nature to them.
It's not only second nature, I think social media is interesting. I have two sons. They're total natives. They don't stop and think, how is that going to, if I post that, how is that going to impact me and what people think about me? And those of us that are older, and not only did we not grow up with all that technology, but we were also, I don't know if it's taught, but just the natural thing to do was keep it to yourself. Be careful what you say because it'll come back to haunt you. Well, they'll put anything out there in the universe and they don't care. And there's some benefit to that because you're very authentic. I admire the youth from that standpoint. And then maybe there's just a little bit of cautionary tales of just be careful. The world is going very fast. And again, maybe it's my psychology that I'm very intrigued by it. And I
Hmm.
love to see how it's changing, what the impacts are, and keep an open mind of I don't have all the answers.
Definitely. How important is it for women to have a personal brand and to maintain or grow one?
I think it's as important for, I think it's important for everybody. So male or female, it's just something that people come to know you and expect that from you. And so I think that personal brand is very important and to be consistent with it.
Hmm.
So, what you're known for, are you known for being helpful? Some people out there might have a negative personal brand, like, oh, that's not the person to go to. So, again, being professional and protecting who you are and what you are and conveying that consistently, I think is important.
Now, with part of that, protecting your personal brand, you also learn how to leverage networks and the community. So, what strategies have you found that have worked for you in regards to networking and building a professional relationship in the industry?
I think it's important to be active in associations. So certainly in the promo side of it, there's a lot of regional associations. Everybody has an opportunity to get more involved, and I personally had a lot of success with that. I was a director and a VP of the Promotional Products Association of Chicago several years ago, and at the time, I would say that was instrumental in how I built my brand within the Chicago region because I was visible. So building your brand, you want to be visible. I was able to network with a lot of distributors and suppliers that I didn't know. Some of those distributors that I met through that experience became some of my largest customers. And some of those suppliers that I met through that experience are still great friends today and confidants, people that I can rely on. I think going out and joining things like women's leadership associations or organizations. I personally get involved with the Women's Leadership Conference in the promotional products industry. And I also think something that I observe when I'm out doing events for customers or going to Print United or ISA or PPAI is try and attend as much of the industry events or of the industry or that event you can because you meet different people, you're more fully immersed in it. And again, you're visible, but you're also learning, and it helps people see you in different roles and different positions.
Really, really good advice, I think, for everyone.
Exactly.
The one question I want to end with is something that I ask every woman is knowing what you know now with all of what you've been through in the industry, what advice would you give yourself if you were just starting out in the industry?
I would say dream big and think about what you really want to do. Even if what makes you happy, even if it's a hobby today, is there a way to monetize that and make money at it? Because once you start in the work world, you're there for a long time. So just getting that degree, just getting that job to pay the bills, it's going to get old quickly. So dream big, take your time in those early stages if you can afford to. I know some people have to get done with college and start paying the bills, but if you can take a little time to really think through what's going to make you happy. Also, when you start a job, communicate. Make sure, sometimes people just kind of sit in the shadows and plug along, but communicate with your team members, your management, especially what is it you do hope to accomplish, and ask them to lay out a plan for you and then hold them accountable, but ask them to hold you accountable as well. Because if they don't know that you want to be a manager, you can't be disappointed if you get passed up. And sometimes you see that people didn't really share that they were interested and someone made an assumption they weren't. And so communication is always going to be key.
That's very, very good advice. You're looking at a group of people you want to promote from within, and well, they never really had any interest in moving into a different position. They seem to be happy in the role they are. But if they didn't say anything, it's very hard to even help them to reach out for that next position.
Exactly. Exactly. You need to, like I said, dream big and let other people know you're dreaming big.
Well, Sherry, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate the conversation. I really appreciated it.
Thank you, Denise. It's been fun, and I look forward to our next conversation.
That sounds good.